It all begins on a cliff, with two people face to face, and the one standing calls the one on his knees, squad captain Jin So-un, saying that his memory is truly remarkable, and thanks to him, they restored all the records of the Murim Alliance, and he is actually very grateful for that. And this guy's dead serious. He's the leader of the Murim Alliance, the Taechung Divine Sword Yong So-un. As for the guy fallen on the ground wounded, he says that he told him to memorize them, so he went ahead and memorized everything, and when he told him to restore them, he went ahead and restored everything. But even so, this is how he repays him with such a pathetic death, and he is the captain of the Sojung squad, Jin So-un. But then the Alliance leader says he heard he memorized the Simhanguk archive, where the Murim Alliance's top secret information was kept, and if someone like him were to collaborate with the demonic cult, his Murim Alliance could be in danger. So for the justice of the Jianghu, and for the greater good and the safety of the Murim Alliance, he must disappear from this world along with his memory. And hearing this, Jin So-un asks what the hell he means by the greater good, and what on earth this twisted Murim Alliance means. And what do you mean by danger? The Murim Alliance has already been defeated by the demonic cult and fled to the ends of the earth, barely hanging on by a single thread. But to think there was still danger of falling further, and it's truly impressive. But the leader says pissed off that the Murim Alliance will defeat the demonic cult and re-establish the foundation of the Murim. Only our boy asks if the Murim Alliance, which sacrificed countless people as meat shields while fleeing to the North Sea, will really do that. And he's genuinely looking forward to it, because he wants to see how he will establish this grandiose sense of the greater good. But you know what? Seeing how he values this grandiose cause above human lives, he can't tell which side is the demonic cult and which side is the Murim Alliance. And completely furious at this remark, the leader says he has already been corrupted by the demonic cult, but our boy simply goes ahead and jumps off the cliff. But before that, he says that he entrusted the fate of his sect to the dirty hands of the Murim Alliance, and in the end, he regrets it. But at least his death, his damn death, he will decide it himself. And so as he fell from the cliff, he kept thinking that life was hell, because he remembered everything. And when the war between justice and evil began between the Murim Alliance and the demonic cult, his juniors and he warriors from a weak and obscure sect were mobilized for the war. But the demonic cult was strong, and the Murim Alliance was too weak. Eventually, the Murim Alliance decided to flee to the North Sea, and they were used as meat shields to buy time for the high-ranking officials of the Murim Alliance to escape. And the damn Alliance, having fled to the North Sea, came to him with a proposal, where he had to memorize all the records of the Murim Alliance, saying that if he memorized all of this and restored them at their base in the North Sea, they would pull his juniors from the Taeul Sect off the battlefield. So basically, what Jin So-un did was desperately memorize everything. But in the end, this is what he got. And in his final thoughts, he wonders if he should have gone to the battlefield instead of memorizing books in the library. And if he had gone, he could have sacrificed himself to let at least one person escape. But in the end, he knows he shouldn't have. He should have practiced martial arts more earnestly before that. And it really sucks right now. And why did the heavens give him this kind of ability? And if they really wanted to give him something, they could have given him a good ability, like internal energy. And facing death, Jin So-un deeply regrets it. If only he were a little stronger to save his juniors. He really should have gotten stronger during that time, instead of begging others to protect them. And he should have been the one protecting the others, and not just them, but himself too. And apparently this desire of his was stronger than he expected. And then a few seconds after he closes his eyes, he wakes up again, looking up at the clear sky, with several leaves on his head, and some childish voices telling him to get up right now. And simply a guy in front of him calls him an idiot, and points a wooden sword at his head, saying that his juniors endured more than that, and he is pathetic indeed. Except our boy Jin So-un starts remembering that this memory is truly cursed, and he gets up grinding his teeth in anger, because even now, at the moment of his death, this damn memory makes him remember everything from the very beginning, and it sure hurts like hell. But when our boy looks ahead, he notices something weird, because he is surrounded by disciples from his own sect, and he quickly recognizes this place as the training ground of his Taeul Sect, and he spots some of his fellow disciples in the background. And obviously, he gets very emotional about it, and he already starts running to hug them. He recognizes the girl as junior sister Hong, and she confused asks what he's doing. And on the other side is the idiot Lee Jimpio, who asks his senior brother if something happened. And behind them are several other kids who are pretty worried about him asking what's going on. And our protagonist recognizes all of them as his juniors from the Taeul Sect, and he remarks to himself that he is indeed a warehouse of memories and this damn memory ability. But still in the end it was a good thing. But obviously these words of his leave the others very confused. But then he simply starts poking the girl, and says that anyway, junior sister Hong was cute even when she was young, and he never thought about it because she bullied him all the time, and he actually missed her mean streaks from back then. As for the other boy, When they were young, him being a bedwetter was pretty annoying, but if he could really go back in time, he would wash the sheets 100 or 1,000 times if possible. But while our boy was simply acting crazy, reminiscing about the past, another kid in the back with a wooden sword asks what the hell he's doing pretending to be crazy because he's afraid of the duel. And very arrogantly, this kid says that if he doesn't pick up his sword right now, those juniors he cares so much about will be his opponents in his play. And observing this, our protagonist becomes quite displeased, thinking that this vision could have shown his good memories and not this pathetic idiot whom he remembers all too well, the precious young master of the Gyeogyong Merchant Guild, Taeul, who entered his sect after donating a massive amount of money. And this guy, relying on his father's money and power, beats the Taeul disciples half to death under the pretext of a duel, and they couldn't even fight back for fear of having their sponsorship cut off, so they just took the beatings in silence. But now our protagonist thinks it's just some random memory, so he turns around and says, sure, since he wants it so much, if the heavens are forcing him to dish out a beating, even in a memory he can't refuse, nor can he pass up getting a little revenge for his past either. But hearing this, that kid gets really pissed off, thinking he's too arrogant, and charges right at the protagonist. And Jin So-un begins to observe his movements, and recognizes the sword technique he suffered from in his past life, Three Glory Sword, which is a martial art that the Gyeogyong Merchant Guild personally commissioned from the famous wandering warrior Hyun Won-soo. It's suited for a wandering style, and the sword strikes are unrefined, and the movement is incredibly fierce. Moreover, since it deliberately aimed for the eyes, the young disciples of the Taeul Sect were left defenseless, and back then, he memorized the forms and breathing patterns as soon as he saw them, but he lacked the skill to dodge and counter-attack. However, compared to the crazy bastards from the demonic cult he's faced since then, this kid's strike is nothing, so he easily dodges the strike, which leaves that kid very surprised. And once again, Jin So-un says, recalling the past, that compared to the techniques he had to memorize one by one in that damn library, this kid's strikes are nothing, and he can see everything wide open with his own eyes. So like that, he charges at him with the Minor Heaven Sword Art, the first basic form, and the kid, very surprised after being attacked, recognizes it as the Minor Heaven Sword Art, but he thinks it's unbelievable. And then our boy goes back to him, and with that crazy look on his face, says that this is actually really good, and being able to beat this guy with his Minor Heaven Sword Art is indeed magnificent and highly satisfying, and basically smacks him in the head with the sword. But right after he attacks the kid, everyone falls silent, completely stunned, and the rich kid starts screaming that he actually dared to attack Gai Cho-yang, the eldest son of the Gyeogyong Merchant Guild, with that trashy sword technique, and that now he must face the brutal consequences himself, charging at our boy, saying that this is all his fault. But basically right after he falls to the ground unconscious, leaving our boy completely lost, and simply watching that fight, the disciples get really hyped, and they start cheering, saying that Senior Jin So-un is indeed amazing, and they didn't know he was this strong. And some even apologize for thinking he was pathetic before, while our protagonist starts trembling with excitement, thinking that getting to beat up Guy before passing on to the afterlife is truly satisfying, and now he can die with no regret. But before he could wake up from this vision, he gets punched right in the face by his friend, asking if he's out of his mind, and if the Gyeogyong Merchant Guild stops sponsoring them, they'll be completely screwed, and if he really thinks everyone else was a fool for just taking a beating from that idiot. But while she kept yelling and yelling, our boy realized something weird, that this punch hurt, and he finally understands that it's not just a vision, but reality. And right after, she hits him even harder, wondering what kind of nonsense he's spouting now, and if he's gone crazy by any chance. And simply put, our protagonist hits the ground after the blow, and then he realizes that he truly went back to the past. And so later on, our boy was in a small room, peacefully thinking about what had happened, and basically, he opened his eyes and found himself lying in an infirmary bed. And from what he remembers, he passed out after being hit by his junior sister, and so he took this chance to clear things up and figure out more or less what happened. And first, it started with the rebirth of the demonic cult, and the Murim Alliance, which opposes the demonic cult, was destroyed after losing the war, and his Taeul Sect was also on the brink of ruin because it belonged to the Murim Alliance. In the midst of this having an unnecessarily good memory, he was assigned the mission to memorize and restore all the books belonging to the Alliance, and it even reached a point where he couldn't memorize anymore. But even so, he stated that he would engrave every book and document of the Murim Alliance into his head without missing a single character, and in exchange, what he asked for was to please pull his juniors off the battlefield. However, they claimed that this memory could become an obstacle to the future of the Murim Alliance, and after that, he thought he had died. But when he opened his eyes, he had returned to the past, and thanks to the memories of the martial arts manuals remaining in his head, he defeated Gai Cho-yang, whom he could never have beaten originally. But right now, he really doesn't know what the hell is going on. And come to think of it, while his body and clothes went back to how they were before. Only the Azure Dragon Bracelet returned with him to the past, and that was one of the few victories during the many battles against the demonic cult. The Azure Dragon Bracelet, the bracelet of the demonic cult's Lord Protector, obtained as a trophy from that victory, and he remembers that this bracelet suddenly shone brightly at the moment his breath stopped in his previous life. But why is that? And could this bracelet be related to his return to the past? And somehow that might be true. But while he was thinking about this, he started hearing shouting in the background, someone saying that if they don't hand over that bastard, there will be hell to pay. And what he needs right now is to see the guy who cracked his son's head open. But the sect leader apologizes, saying it was a failure of his supervision. So he asks him to please talk to him and not to Jin So-un. And the merchant starts saying that he is forgetting the fact that although Taeul is temporarily registered in the Taeul Sect due to circumstances, he is the legitimate son of their merchant group. And since they live off their group's sponsorship, how about they cut off his funding starting this month? And what does he think about that? But the sect leader says he knows that very well, and he will always be grateful for the merchant group's kindness. But since Jin So-un also passed out, it seems Taeul hit him there as well, so they will deal with him strict. And because of that, he asks him to please let it go just this once. And our boy knows that one of them is the sect leader, and the other person is Suk, the father of Taeul, whom he punished just yesterday. The merchant starts telling him to punish that Jin So-un guy, and how dare a lowly peasant not even know his proper place, and that's why the Taeul Sect is in this state. And if he, the sect leader, had taught them properly in the first place, none of this would have happened. And once again, the sect leader begs for forgiveness. And listening to all this, Jin So-un gets really pissed, remarking that so he got a second chance at life, and obviously he's not going to let this slide. So he calmly gets up, wondering if he should stir things up right now. And so later on, after the merchant leaves, the sect leader thanks him for his generosity. But right after the merchant leaves, he starts yelling that he will let it slide just this once. But to his surprise, the one waiting for him was our boy up on the roof, saying he heard that he was desperately looking for him. And he basically appears in front of him, saying that Jin So-un is just a lowly peasant. And the chubby guy, very surprised, asks if it's really him. So he's the bastard who hurt his son. Only our boy asks why he's calling him a bastard. And you're not even older than him. But right after he thinks that, he realizes that actually he is older, because he went back to the past. So just like that, he takes a step forward and says that anyway, making such a fuss over a single hit to the head during a duel when senior brother enters the Murim Academy. Later, he assumes he plans to follow him there and make a scene too. And very pissed off, the merchant asks what he's talking about, and that he used a cowardly trick under the guise of a duel to crack his son's head open. And Taeul is a child who doesn't even need to train martial arts in a place like your Taeul Sect, and they need to devotedly serve Taeul until he enters the Murim Academy. Except our boy says that there are over 10 juniors who couldn't get up for days after being hit by senior Taeul, and they were already calling it duels. So he asks him to let him say one thing: entering the Murim Academy with martial arts skills that allow him to be defeated by a lowly peasant from a third-rate sect. He apparently is daydreaming, which makes the merchant increasingly pissed off, calling him a brat, asking how dare he act in such an arrogant way, because he thinks he can take responsibility, even if his group cuts off their sponsorship to the Taeul Sect. Except our boy asks, what do you mean responsibility? And the fat guy says that even though the Taeul Sect belongs to the Baekbalbong, it is still a third-rate sect on the verge of extinction, and if he decides to, he can negotiate with any other sect at any time. But if that happens, your Taeul Sect won't even have to worry about tomorrow's meal right away. So he asks what he thinks of that. Then our boy begins to remember about this so-called Baekbalbong concept, which refers to 108 peaks, and the Taeul Sect is one of them. In other words, the Taeul Sect is a third-rate sect that lost its past glory, and this Baekbalbong is in name only. But anyway, there is a privilege that the Murim Alliance grants to these sects, that during the entrance exam for the Murim Academy, each sect can recommend one disciple for special admission without a separate test, meaning, although Taeul is the legitimate son of a merchant group and isn't originally from the Baekbalbong, he joined as a lay disciple of his insignificant sect after paying a massive sponsorship fee to enter the Murim Academy through the special admission. However, now back to the present, our boy tells him to go ahead and do it, and surprise, the fat guy asks what he's talking about, and Jin So-un talks about responsibility again, and he says he'll take it from here on out. But he's really curious, since there's less than a year left until the special admission screen. So why did he send his son to such a pathetic place, instead of many other sects in Baekbalbong? And it certainly wasn't because he was rejected by all the others, was it? Which makes him increasingly furious, while our protagonist remembers that, in his past life, they cater to every whim of that damn merchant group. And the merchant asks how dare he, such an arrogant brat like this, speak so rudely in front of him. But Jin So-un thinks that actually they recommended Gye-cheon for special admission and got him into the Murim Academy, and so unable to listen to any more of this. The merchant says that's enough, and asks if he doesn't know that the Murim Alliance doesn't even care about them anymore, and he should keep in mind that the only one who can save them is his merchant group. But our protagonist keeps thinking that, however, the merchant group ended up cutting the sponsorship anyway, so he goes right up to the merchant's ear and asks him to please keep this in mind. The only one who can save the Gyeryong Merchant Guild is the Taeul Sect, and he leaves the furious man behind. He thinks it's no use begging for others to protect you, because you must have the power to protect yourself, otherwise money is useless. This is what our boy learned through a pathetic death. But now later on, Jin So-un heads towards the mountain, arriving near a very weird cave, and getting there, he thinks that now his task is just one to get strong. However, it's hard to get stronger with just his tail heart method and the minor heaven sword art, so only one path remains to obtain overwhelming internal energy through spiritual herb, and the herb he is looking for is the legendary spiritual herb, the 10,000-year fire ginseng, and the books on spiritual herbs of Jianghu, one of the secret documents of the Murim Alliance. It details the discovery locations, times of appearance, and movement paths of all the spiritual herbs that have appeared in Jianghu, and all this content was perfectly stored in his head. So he basically plans to recall the book's records and find them and eat the spiritual herbs one by one. But now he has a big problem with that, because there is a giant monster guarding it, and he thinks to himself that right now obtaining a 10,000-year fire ginseng is just the first step. And with minor heaven sword art from the Taeul Sect, he can suppress it in a single strike. But that was just a very superfluous thought, because he knows there's no way that would work, and his internal energy and sword technique are both too weak, and he wonders if there is really any need to waste his strength like this. He thinks not. So he grabs a piece of wood and sets fire to the tip, thinking that later he remembered that after putting hundreds of thousands of books in his head, that remarkable swordsmanship isn't everything, and the path of the sword warrior, he doesn't know about those things, but winning any way he can is all that matters. So he sets fire to the webs first, and the webs catch on fire until making that horrible monster be basically set ablaze. And our boy watches everything calmly and starts shouting thank you very much to everyone, especially to the bastards from the Murim Alliance. And so after a few hours, after Jin So-un defeats that very weird spider, he finally consumes the herb and begins channeling its power within him. But finally, after a long time, he says that's enough, and this shit isn't enough. Falling into complete despair, to think his internal energy is only at this level, even after eating such a precious thing, roots and all, even having eaten something so good it won't be absorbed, and as expected, the Taeul heart method is trash. No, it has a lot of problems, and actually the trash might be himself, and he realizes quite sadly that at this rate, with the things that happen in the future, he won't be able to protect his Taeul Sect, because he knows that as soon as the war between justice and evil begins, the low-ranking warriors will be used as mere meat shields, and in this life, he must ensure that the disciples of the Taeul Sect don't die meaninglessly. But to do that, he must become a key figure in the Murim Alliance before the war starts, so that will be the only way to protect his Taeul Sect, and he acknowledges that the first step was entering the Murim Academy within a year. But at this rate, he won't even be able to enter the Murim Alliance, and if this continues, he is definitely screwed. But even in despair, he starts thinking of a solution, because he needs to increase his internal energy as soon as possible, and what he might need is a spiritual pill. And right then, the spiritual pill from Mount Hoa, meant for Gye-cheon, could be the perfect solution. And it was definitely around this time that Gye-cheon's father spent a truly massive amount of money to buy the Mount Hoa sect's spiritual medicine, the Snow Plum Pill, for his son. But the day before Gye-cheon could take it, the Snow Plum Pill vanished without a trace, and the thief's identity was never revealed. But since the incident hasn't happened yet, he also has a chance, because he knows humans always leave traces, so maybe he can find it. And so he kind of enters his mental library, and he starts thinking about the monthly report from the Heve branch of the Murim Alliance, and he begins running through several paths of many possibilities among his files, and finally arrives at one of them, because if he looks very slowly at this place, there is definitely a clue somewhere in his memory, and maybe it could be the Murim Alliance's entry and exit log, the mission reports, or other thing. All the records he remembers, he will combine and organize them using deduction. Thus, he arrives at 3 possible names. The soul-chasing guest is one of Dain Chung's legendary 5 swords. So, finally, after organizing his thoughts, our boy comments that serving as a mobile library would be very useful for sure, and what he needs to do is take the Snow Plum Pill for himself. But right after he calms down, he heads towards that beast to get his weapon. But soon he notices something strange, which is his bracelet glowing out of nowhere, and he wonders why a light is suddenly coming from the Azure Dragon Bracelet. But right after, some kind of mist starts coming out of it, and he wonders what that is. And to our boy's shock, that mist expands even further and starts heading towards the monster, basically consuming its energy. And soon, our boy realizes that its energy, instead of blue, is now red, and it seems to be absorbing the human face spider's core. And finally, after it absorbs everything, our boy notices the difference in his body and his being, and very happy, he starts laughing a lot, because this is unbelievable, and he knows this was a trophy obtained in a victorious battle after an arduous fight in the past. It's the Azure Dragon Bracelet, a relic of the blood-drinking demon, one of the Dharma protectors of the demonic cult, and this bracelet, which he kept to commemorate his victory, and also his sacrifice, suddenly activated out of nowhere. And now to test its power, he destroys a giant rock with just a single punch, and he realizes that the bracelet can perfectly detoxify the wicked core of the human face spider absorbed by it. And then this purified energy mixes naturally with the Taeul heart method inside his body, and the result is that he thinks the heavens didn't actually abandon him, because now, thanks to the demonic cult's treasure, his internal energy has become stronger. But while that was going on back in the city, that merchant's son was bragging about all the opportunities and asking the girl if she knew what it was, the Snow Plum Pill. And within the Mount Hua sect, it is the second most effective pill for increasing internal energy after the Purple Firmament Pill, and it is such a precious spiritual pill that only the true disciples of the Mount Hua sect can obtain it. And that is the kind of rare spiritual pill it is, and his father got that rare medicine just for him, Gai Cho-young. But while the girl listens to all of this, she thinks it sucks. Where is he? And what the hell is he doing right now? And she is the protagonist's friend, Hong Soo-ryun, the only daughter of the Taeul Sect leader, and she remembers that on that day, she should have stepped forward instead of senior brother Jin So-un, because she is the one who should carry the future of the Taeul Sect. After the incident that day, senior brother Jin So-un left the Taeul Sect. Since Kyun-suk visited the Taeul Sect every day, he thought he was being considerate in his own way, but he was very stupid, and obviously that merchant's son is really into her, wanting to buy her with money. But simply to his surprise, the sect juniors rushed up to the girl, calling her senior sister, offering her good food, asking her to taste it, basically ignoring that idiot who finds these brats very annoying. And right after, he leaves there very pissed off. But then Hong tells them that they should eat their meal in the dining hall. But why did they bring it all the way here? And she just asks them to eat it quickly since they are hungry. But a little girl approaches her and says she recognizes that look, and she asks if by any chance she is thinking about senior brother Jin So-un again, which makes Hong very embarrassed, saying she isn't. But the kids, basically drooling over the food, say that senior brother Jin So-un hasn't returned yet and hasn't had dinner either, and they should save some rice dumplings for him when he gets back. And another kid comments that this meat is what senior brother Jin So-un likes the most, and it would be mean if he ate it all by himself, and he is going to wait for his return. But observing this, Hong simply steals some of their dumplings, which highly surprises both of them. Then she says that if they don't eat right now, she will steal everything from them, which makes the kids very scared, and they immediately start eating quickly, while Hong wonders what the hell this kid is doing, leaving the kids behind worried about him, that Jin So-un is truly an idiot. But now that night, the merchant leader was very excited about his son's future possibilities after taking that pill, and while this massive party was going on, there was a little guy jumping across the roof, who was obviously a bandit, and basically after a while, he reaches the forest and starts laughing to himself, commenting that, so this is that famous pill from the Mount Hua sect, and this guy is the soul-chasing guest. And now as he opens it to see the pill, he gets increasingly excited, because he knows that if he takes this spiritual pill, he will have enough internal energy to learn a new technique of the Radiant Heaven Divine Palm. And now it's time to get out of there. But to his surprise, there was already someone waiting for him, and quickly cut off his head. And after he takes the pill, he tells the guy that he is sorry, but this thing will have to go with him because he needs it. And after robbing the robber, the deed is done. To understand this, let's go back a few days before the robbery incident, when our protagonist goes to a certain shop of weapons and crossbows. He opens the door, and says he came here after hearing that the owner deals in items that are hard to find, and he asks if by chance he has traps for catching people. The shop owner asks what he means by trap for catching people, saying he is an interesting customer, and that this is the best hunting and trap shop with every type of trap, from ones for small rabbits to ones for bears the size of a mountain, except for people of course. But our boy goes there, hands him plenty of money, and asks that please he gives him some traps for catching tigers or bears. The shopkeeper asks if by chance he is going hunting, and he says that with these traps the pelts will be ruined, but our boy says he won't be skinning them, so it doesn't matter. He just needs something that activates by sensitivity, even if a single hair falls on it, powerful enough to rip off a bear's leg, but perhaps something that could send them to the afterlife in a single blow. Exactly that is what he wants, which leaves the seller a bit frightened. With his 27-year veteran intuition kicking in, he feels he shouldn't be selling this to this kid, but even so, he went ahead and sold it. So, now back to the present. The person who robbed the robber wasn't actually our boy, but rather someone else, saying he heard that he was quite famous in Jianghu, so he thought it would be quite difficult, but in the end, it worked out very well. And shortly after, another guy approaches, saying that it's as expected of his senior brother, and he comments that this was too easy, and these two are from the 5 swords of Dianjiang. And the guy with his hair fallen forward says they were worried for nothing, considering they truly are the 5 swords of Dianjiang. But first they need to get rid of the bodies, and the soul-chasing guest must be listed as missing for now. And his junior brother says that first, they can finally take a look at the Snow Plum Pill together. And finally when they open the capsule they are very happy, because seeing its bright color and the strong plum blossom scent, this is definitely the Snow Plum Pill from the Mount Hua that they were looking for. But little did they know that there was a third person watching too, commenting that it's 2 mouths but only 1 pill. And finally the two notice something is wrong, and soon after they attack, asking who was there, while our protagonist gives them a hello right after stealing the box, which leaves the brothers in shock, and the bigger one tells the smaller one to catch him now, because he can't get away, and this little guy tells him to consider the price of starting something above his station, because this is something he shouldn't have, just the 2 of them. Only our protagonist asks what he means. They are just a couple more thieves, but he is being a very shameless bastard right now, and he asks if that's what they taught them in Dianjiang, and they were the first ones to steal it. But obviously these 2 guys are more experienced than Jin So-un, so they reach him quickly, but in the last second, he manages to dodge the blow, and tells them he's warning them, watch where you step. And after the guy steps on that trap, his leg is almost ripped off by it. And finally, when he sees the blood, he starts screaming in pain, while his senior brother runs over to him, asking if he's okay. And our boy observes, saying that he had just warned him to watch where he steps, but apparently he didn't hear him. Grinding his teeth, that guy says he doesn't know who he is or what he is, but that he is a truly cowardly fellow, being a warrior holding a sword, and using tricks as petty as this. He orders him to take off his mask and reveal his identity right now. Only our protagonist simply picks up a stone and asks what he means by him, and he simply says he is so-and-so from such and such sect, disciple of God knows who. And soon after he throws that stone right at that guy's feet, telling him to go to hell. But the guy's reaction was fast, and he managed to dodge the trap and almost ripped his leg off too. And with him very scared, our protagonist says he is the new owner of the Snow Plum Pill, and they are both killers who murdered the soul-chasing guest, and that they are on their way to prison now. And he asks what they think of that. But you know, how did Jin So-un know they were the true culprits? Well, basically because of his extraordinary memory, because he found something strange when reviewing the log. From the moment the Snow Plum Pill was stolen, every trace of the soul-chasing guest had completely disappeared. Furthermore, there was no appearance of expert who seemed to have consumed the Snow Plum Pill. So, he looked for logs of all the warriors who had even the slightest increase in internal energy during the same period, and ended up finding their trail. And it was highly likely that the soul-chasing guest had been secretly buried after being murdered. And assuming that at least 2 people shared the same pill, those who had a reasonably fast increase in internal energy at the same time, without a specific reason, although not enough to attract public attention, were these 2 complete idiots, Gu Ilmu and Zhang Hangi, both from the Dianjiang 5 swords. And our protagonist tells the 2 that of course he knows them well, because they are 2 notorious members of the Dianjiang 5 swords, directly from the Dianjiang sect itself. And the senior brother says that he is someone who knows that, but even so dares to interfere in their business, and he asks if by chance he isn't afraid of the revenge of their great Dianjiang and the Murim Alliance. Only our protagonist says he didn't know he could report another thief who encountered him while committing a robbery, but to Jin So-un's surprise, the younger one charges at him, saying, these are just petty tricks, and he delivers a powerful punch to the ground, dissolving all the traps, which leaves our protagonist quite surprised. And now, much more animated, he recognizes that it's the end for Jin So-un. While our boy thinks it's a drag, the traps were triggered ahead of time, and this guy even wounded comments that next he will rip off that mask and tear him limb from limb, so he should be ready, only observing this very seriously. Our boy thinks of just one thing: running away as fast as possible. But obviously the two aren't going to let it slide. But the junior tells the senior brother to be careful, because that guy is going in a direction that is covered in leaves, so there may still be traps. But the senior brother asks, why worry when he can just follow the steps he took? And this is very simple. And this junior brother comments that he is quite intelligent, and basically they follow the steps that our boy takes, getting closer and closer to him. And finally our boy stops, and they very animated ask what he says now. The situation is this: your life ends here. But what they didn't know was that in the position our boy was in, it was where he could trigger all the remaining traps. So he steps out of his own footprint, and with a little smile on his face, he knows he won, and this is the end. And in this way, the traps are triggered, catching them all by surprise, pinning their arms, legs, and bodies to the ground. And in great pain, they ask how this is possible, while our boy calmly approaches them, saying that they really scared him, and they were smarter than he thought, and to think that if they moved only by following his steps, they were almost right. But the thing that they unfortunately overlooked is that among the traps, the place where he stepped, you had to step exactly without a centimeter of error, and completely scared. The junior brother asks how this is possible, and this is completely insane, and if he really prepared the traps so densely just to begin with, but how the hell can he move with such precision? And our boy says it is because his memory is the only gift the heavens gave him, and finally finishes those two off. But while this was happening in another place in the morning, an old man asked how so Taeul Sect of Hefei, and if it really is part of one of the 108 peaks. And this guy asking was the chief strategist of the Murim Alliance, So-un. And up ahead, an elder of the Murim Alliance, Tae-won, tells the strategist that he is correct. That is it. But as they know, not many powerful sects have emerged in Hefei as well, and now the time has come to replace it with a new main sect. But still, the strategist remains silent, thinking that if it is a sect expanding its power in Hefei, he must be talking about the Iron Sword Sect. And it seems that the rumors circulating within the Murim Alliance were true. And so, the elder says that these tea flowers, which he had a great deal of trouble getting for him, he asks if they are to his liking. The strategist finally realizes that the story about Tae-won secretly supporting the Iron Sword Sect apparently was true. But in this manner, the strategist says that he should know that the principle was to replace a sect of the 108 peaks, unless it commits a grave error. So he asks if by any chance could the Taeul Sect have committed such an error. And Namgung then says the truth is that there are rumors, and the Taeul Sect is using its special admission rights to conduct business aimed at profit, which surprises the strategist, asking if he means that the Taeul Sect is using its privilege as one of the 108 peaks to satisfy its own greed. And listening to this question of his, Namgung becomes quite animated, because he is going exactly where he wanted him to go. And after staying silent for a while, Namgung, being as shrewd as he is, asks, please not to misunderstand. It's not as if he were mentioning this because he wants to place another sect among the 108 peaks. Obviously, he doesn't want to. Okay guys. And he says that the only reason the Murim Alliance granted privileges to the 108 peaks was to commemorate the fact that they fought together during the most dangerous and difficult times in the past. And he is truly desolate as a member of the Murim Alliance that these meanings are being tarnished like this. But while all these schemes were happening behind the scenes, our protagonist was quietly at an inn, ingesting his new spiritual pill. And after having consumed it for a while, he finally wakes up and says that the Snow Plum Pill is famous for a reason. It is approximately a little over half a cycle. And finally, he surpassed the internal energy of his past life. And so after he goes down the stairs, he comes face to face with the boy, who already wakes up with a start, asking, young master finally came out, and he asks, surprised how he could spend several days there without eating anything. And he thought something had happened, while our boy thinks that a lot happened to tell the truth. But he just asks him to bring something to eat now. But the kid, a little uncomfortable, says it's very late now and the kitchen is closed. But Jin So-un simply says he will compensate him enough. Oh, and he will also pay for a week of lodging and meals in advance, which makes the kid very happy, asking why that cook is sleeping so early, and he is going to wake him up immediately, while our boy, very shrewd, thinks that as expected there is nothing in this world that cannot be bought with money, and he feels happy for having prepared this money in advance using the Azure Dragon Bracelet. And after some tests, he realized that it doesn't just work on demons, and it can drain the vitality of any living creature, and he can absorb it as His own energy and tiger skin is also a big bonus, and well, it's good that he found a way to earn money, but the problem now is that the power of the Azure Dragon Bracelet is a very dangerous ability, which could be easily mistaken for the demonic cult's technique, an ability that is extremely dangerous, and one of the 10 forbidden techniques chosen by the Murim Alliance, the Great Star Absorbing Art. But the Azure Dragon Bracelet's ability appears to be nothing other than the Great Star Absorbing Art, and if the Murim Alliance finds out, not only he, but everyone in the sect will be in danger, so he knows he must never be caught with it. And finally, after a while, the kid returns with the food and asks how it is. His chef really put in the effort this time, and our boy is very happy with this great banquet in front of him, saying it looks very delicious. But soon after, he starts observing the kid, who is looking intently at him, and this is the kid who asks if he heard that rumor by any chance, and Jin So-un asks what rumor that is, and the kid says that the Gyeoryong Merchant Guild held a banquet recently after obtaining a precious spiritual pill. However, he heard that the spiritual pill was stolen during the banquet, and just imagine that to steal a spiritual pill from such a crowded place without anyone noticing, they must be very skilled. And anyway, the Murim Alliance's investigation team appeared to handle the matter and also to arrest the culprit, which makes our protagonist almost die of fright right now. And the scared kid asks if he is okay and if he wants to drink some water. Only our boy says, no, it's all good, and he wants him to keep talking about what happened recently, and he wants to know what the Murim Alliance did. And the kid says the Murim Alliance investigation team appeared and tracked the culprit. And listening to this, Jin So-un realizes that if they caught someone, it's a complete disaster. Since he is the real thief, it means they caught an innocent person. And the kid says they said the trail went cold quickly and they couldn't find anything, which for sure was a great relief for Jin So-un. But on the outside, he says, wow, the owner must be devastated by this. And the boy says yes. And soon after, the banquet ended very early, and because of that, they lost many customers, which was a great pity. But fortunately, he heard that another banquet will be held in Hefei, and our protagonist, curious, asks what he means by another banquet, and the kid says that this time it's at the Iron Sword Sect, which leaves Jin So-un in shock, remembering the past, and the boy who didn't notice his reaction the moment he heard that the leader of the Iron Sword Sect is celebrating his 60th birthday. So they will have a banquet for 7 days and nights, and they are expecting a busy season for now. But in Jin So-un's head, he remembers that was it. Around this time, that disgrace happened at the 60th birthday banquet of the Iron Sword Sect leader in his previous life. His own father was humiliated in front of everyone and had to kneel before countless people and apologize to the Iron Sword Sect leader because of none other than himself, his son Jin So-un. And he, clenching his fists in such rage, thinks that if it's like this time, he will not go to the Iron Sword Sect no matter what happened, and he will never step foot in that place again. He will not let his father suffer such humiliation because of him, because this for sure cannot happen. But that is what he thought that day. But now, why the hell at the 60th birthday banquet of the Iron Sword Sect leader is he in a duel against the grandson of the Iron Sword Sect leader in front also of countless people? And before that, a few days ago, back at the Taeul Sect, all the juniors were training with their sword, and after a long training time, everyone is quite tired, and these three are brothers known as Lee Dongrong, Lee In-ho, and Lee Gumpyo. And In-ho says that doing 100 vertical strikes in this weather, he wonders if it really helps them train the minor heaven sword art. But down there, Gumpyo starts sweating, asking where the guy who said he wanted to be cool like senior brother Jin So-un went, and the kid, very embarrassed, says that when he said he wanted to be as cool as him, he only said he was proud as a disciple of the Taeul Sect, that he beat up senior Gai Cho-young and mastered the minor heaven sword art. But In-ho says it's basically just saying he is cool. And there, the youngest, Dongrong, asks what they think brother Jin So-un is doing now, and he says quite sadly that it's not the first time this happens, and he hasn't returned for over a week, and he didn't even say where he was going. And In-ho wonders if by chance he is feeling embarrassed because he beat senior Gai Cho-young and isn't returning on purpose. And Gumpyo asks if they think he has abandoned the sect for good because he is worried that the Gyeong Merchant Guild could take revenge on them for what he did. But In-ho asks what the hell he is talking about. Senior brother Jin So-un was annoying sometimes, but he was a good person. Only to everyone's surprise, Dongyong stands up immediately, saying that his senior brother Jin So-un. And at that moment, from outside the sect, our boy enters calmly, thinking that if he doesn't go to the Iron Sword Sect this time, his father won't be ridiculed and forced to apologize. However, that was just one of the many things they did to humiliate him, and even after that, the entire Taeul Sect continued to suffer insults, both big and small, and he knows there is no longer a need to complicate things, because he has already decided that he will not go to the Iron Sword Sect. And not just him, but the entire Taeul Sect must not attend the Sect Day anniversary banquet, and for that to happen, he needs a good excuse. Only as our boy entered, the three already appeared in front of him worried, asking where he had been, while Jin So-un asks if by chance they came to greet him because he had been away for so long. And even the other junior brothers came to welcome him, and he is truly moved, and he starts playing with everyone, asking if they are okay, and if they have been listening to the pavilion leaders, and the boys say that yes, of course, just like he told them to do. And watching him too were a girl and a man, his own father, who angrily asks where the hell he had been wandering before finally returning back home. And our protagonist's father is the leader of the outer pavilion of the Taeul Sect, Jin So-un. And as soon as our boy looks at him, he is very moved, and his father, without any reaction, asks what the hell this is, and why he is acting as if he reunited with his family after a long time. But in the protagonist's head, he never imagined that one day he would want to hug his father so much. A second life is really a beautiful thing, but right then, he gets a knock on the middle of his head, with his father yelling, asking if he thought he was going to act like a madman, and that would spare him from cleaning up the mess he made. And thanks to the confusion he caused with the merchant group, the entire Taeul Sect almost ended up on the street. And the other pavilion leaders have been making the biggest fuss the whole time, demanding that he take him and shave his head right then. But at that moment, Senior Cho-young also appears surprised, as our boy has just returned, and he speaks very irritated that he has been waiting for him, and he asks what kind of cheap trick he used last time. But this time they will have a real duel, only simply our boy starts laughing and pretends to be scared by this glow. Cho asks what the hell he is doing now, and our protagonist says he can't even look at him now because he is blinded by his master's aura, and the effects of the Snow Plum Pill are incredible. And he asks how he could ever defeat someone as strong as him, which leaves the kid red with rage, and on top of that, very embarrassed. He leaves the sect, stomping his feet in anger, but Hong asks why he is provoking him, and if he didn't see that the Snow Plum Pill was stolen before, and our boy says he did. Yes, and that is exactly why he mentioned it to him. And his father comes into the scene and just snorts at his son, asking why this boy has been acting so strange lately. And the girl says she doesn't know either, but well, he has always been kind of strange anyway. Only at that instant, our boy calls the kids, saying he has lots of candy for them, and he asks them to share it nicely, and whoever keeps it all to themselves will deal with him. And seeing this, his father gets more irritated, but if he had that much money, he should have bought rice, not candy. And his friend, curious, asks what all this is, and today he got money to buy these things. But Jin So-un just tells her to stop being so fussy and eat a candy too. Only when he turns to her, he notices she is acting very strange, and she just tells him to forget it, because she just wants him not to go away again. And right now, the merchant group is busy dealing with the Snow Plum Pill incident and preparing for the Iron Sword Sect leader anniversary banquet. They hardly even visit the Taeul Sect anymore, and the sect leader also says they don't need to walk on eggshells around them anymore because of this problem, though he doesn't need to carry everything on his shoulders alone, and she speaks full of shame to him that he must never disappear suddenly like that again, which surprises our boy, who starts to get moved, but soon after he thinks that although he never walked on eggshells, he also didn't try to carry everything alone. But the girl already changes the subject, asking him, by the way, if only the merchant group is going to the anniversary banquet, right? But she says she heard that his Taeul Sect was also going to attend, which surprises the father and son very much, and our protagonist realizes it's a drag, so in the end it's already decided, and she says that the sect leader was reluctant, but it would be rude simply not to attend. There is a concrete reason, but in Jin So-un's head, he knows that he needs to make up an excuse anyway to not go to that place. Only at that moment, his father turns around and says that he will go to the Iron Sword Sect and the rest should stay here, but Jin So-un asks what he is talking about. But while he was worried about his father, one of the kids runs up to him, offering some old food, and he says to our protagonist that these are rice dumplings, and our boy, surprised, asks what this is, and the girl asks if by chance this is a rice dumpling from the merchant group's banquet, and the kid says that they said it was very delicious and he wanted to eat with him, so he held on to it and saved it waiting for him. But he brought many expensive candies and he probably must throw this away, and Jin So-un moved asks if he really didn't eat this and saved it all this time just to eat with him. If he had returned a day later, maybe he wouldn't have resisted, and our boy asks if that's really it, and simply he takes that paper and eats everything at once and tells the kid it was delicious. But the kid, surprised, says he ate everything in his share. Only our boy just apologizes and says it was so good that he ended up eating everything by himself, but in exchange he can have his share of the candies, which makes the kid quite happy, already running for the candy. And right after he leaves, Jin So-un tells Hong that even if they skip this banquet next time, and after this time the Iron Sword Sect, and she says that if there is something to celebrate, probably yes. And our boy says it is, as he thought he cannot let this happen. And in surprise, she asks what he is talking about, and Jin So-un says that they would have to endure endless insults, 10, 100 times, and those children too. And this is simply absurd, so they will go to the Iron Sword Sect. And in the end, our protagonist still had to go to this play. And on the fateful day of the anniversary, there was kind of a procession for the Iron Sword Sect, and in the middle of the procession was our boy talking to another guy, who tells him that there is one thing he must obey when they arrive at the sect, and our protagonist asks what it would be, and this old man says not to act recklessly under any circumstance, and he is the pavilion leader, Kang Jae-sek, and Jin So-un asks whether it isn't painfully obvious that those words are clearly meant for him, and he asks if he saw this banquet this time just to keep an eye on him, right? And the old man says that he is crossing the line and asks why he wanted to come along suddenly. Only the protagonist says that he is really too much pavilion leader, and he says that he also wants to hold back. But what should he do if people keep provoking him? And the old man says that is exactly what he is ordering him to hold back, because he has caused many problems recently and didn't even return home. Only our boy says that he never cared if he returned home or not before. So why is he like this suddenly? But in the corner, he notices his father quite serious and even a little nervous, and they ask if by chance it's just his impression, and he has been extremely quiet since they decided to come to the Iron Sword headquarters, but obviously not listening to the old man. The old man starts tapping on his head, saying that apparently he has returned to his rebellious phase again. But at this moment, as they were walking, 3 other guys approach them, asking for permission please. And he asks them to step aside so that they can pass, because they have a companion who is already saving their spot up ahead. But the pavilion leader asks what kind of absurdity this is, and if he is saying that this entire crowd will cut the line just like that. But the kid says that he just said that his companion is up ahead saving the spot. But the pavilion leader, very irritated, says there is a limit to being shameless, and he wants to know if he is trying to cut the line in his face like this. Only then another person interrupts, saying that's enough explaining. They traveled a long way, and out of fatigue, sent someone ahead to save the spot for them before arriving, and he says he is Gu Yang-sa from the Blue Bamboo Fortress, and surprised the merchant leader and his son recognize this name immediately, and this merchant goes up to him and says that the Blue Bamboo Fortress is the most prestigious sect in Nanjing in Jiangsu province, and he asks that please calmly, and this kid, quite cocky, says that at least there is someone with good sense, they're only observing from afar. Our protagonist thinks about the Blue Bamboo Fortress, especially about this bastard, Gu Yang-sa, the fortress master's son, who is complete trash, who later on walks around with Kia Cho-yang as if they were sworn brothers. And together with Kia Cho-yang, he treated the disciples of his sect like mere servants, and he also starts hearing the conversation of others, talking about that merchant leader who froze completely the moment he heard his name, and in fact, a pig of a merchant leader, and a sect that clearly looks pathetic. But wait, these uniforms are from the Taeul Sect of the 108 Peaks, and they ask if this isn't that sect that everyone wonders how it managed to get into the 108 Peaks, and at this rate, their place could be taken by another sect, mainly the Iron Sword Sect. Only that was basically the trigger for the protagonist, who quickly cleared the way for him, asking where is this so-called Blue Bamboo Fortress, because it is a sect of which he has never heard before, and he asks if by chance he can repeat that, which for sure leaves the master's son very pissed off, and our boy bravely scares everyone, saying, wait, he is sure he has heard that name before. Ah, that's right, I know that name. It was in the trash dump, which leaves obviously everyone perplexed right then, and the guy with a lot of rage already draws his sword, asking how this bastard dares to insult his fortress. Only at that instant behind them, a girl appears asking what all this confusion is about, and right then, the guy stops his blow. And the people around recognize the girl as the beautiful wolf of the Iron Sword Sect, and she approaches them and says that all of them saw her grandfather's anniversary banquet, expecting to see blood spilled really, and this girl is Song Moran, the granddaughter of the sect leader. And from Jin So-un's memories, he knows that the Iron Sword Sect is an emerging sect which arose a mere 150 years ago, and they held no grudge against the Taeul Sect, but the fact that they settled in the same Hefei was a big problem, because basically there cannot be 2 suns under the same sky. And the Iron Sword Sect wasn't satisfied with merely expanding its influence, and wanted to take the Taeul Sect status among the 108 peaks of the Murim Alliance. And before his regression, the Taeul Sect attended the anniversary banquet with Hong Sa-ryun and Ge Cho-young together, and he participated in the banquet for people their age, and there they had an argument with the grandson of the Iron Sword Sect leader, the Iron Sword Blood Wolf, Song Mo-hyun, where the sect leader's grandson insulted his sect and challenged him to a duel, and obviously he accepted the fight, even though he knew he would lose. But to stop the fight, his father, upon finding out, knelt in front of everyone and apologized to the Iron Sword Sect leader before countless people, and he thinks that it certainly won't be different this time. And the moment that guy from the fortress recognizes the girl as the beautiful wolf of the Iron Sword, he starts saying, quite embarrassed, that it was all his fault, but she says right away that the Iron Sword Sect has no rules about reserving places in line, so they should go to the back of the line now and be patient. And she turns to our boy and says that it took a while to introduce herself, but she is Song Moran from the Iron Sword Sect, and she apologizes for what just happened. And it's an exaggeration to call this compensation, but she asks if she can escort the people from the Taeul Sect and the merchant group. So that's exactly what she does, escorting everyone, while Ge Cho-young, right next to her, trying to flirt with the girl, comments on what he heard about the beautiful flower among the sect walls, and it seems that the rumors fall far short of her real beauty. and she tells him that he is very kind, and she says that the young sect leader is eagerly waiting for the people from the merchant group and the Taeul Sect so they can go, and our boy back there recognizes her as the granddaughter of the sect leader. And before his regression, Song Moran had no relationship with the Taeul Sect, and he wonders if by chance his actions influence something, or maybe she has another motive. Only after a while, they finally arrive at the place, and she says it's that way, and Hong, quite surprised, says it's huge, while the pavilion leader says it has gotten much bigger than before. But our protagonist knows that certainly it isn't goodwill without a reason, and he will have to keep observing her for now. And so inside the banquet hall of the Iron Sword Sect, the girl introduces everyone, saying that the one in the center with a white beard is her grandfather, and the person next to him is her father, the young sect leader. And at this moment, passing by the others, the merchant and his son step forward, asking the young sect leader if he has been well during this time, since it's been a while since they saw each other. And the girl's father recognizes the merchant immediately and tells him to put formalities aside and why he built such a wall between them. And he goes over to Gai Cheoyoung and says that even now, when he thinks about having lost a talent like him, he gets so angry he can't sleep at night. And seriously, if it weren't for the absurd privileges of the 108 Peaks, he would have accepted him as his disciple. And he is really dying of envy of the Taeul Sect getting such a treasure while they just sat around. Only at that moment his daughter steps forward and says that these are the people from the Taeul Sect, and he should say hi to them too. But simply her father looks with disgust and disdain and asks what she means by Taeul Sect. But at that moment the pavilion leader and the protagonist's father step forward, introducing themselves to him. And the young sect leader says he saw the pavilion leader a few times at the Murim Alliance. And Yujin-san, it seems it's been 20 years since that incident. But our protagonist very lost wonders what incident he means. And the young leader starts asking how that colleague sect leader Hong is doing lately. And looking closely, the young woman he brought this time is the sect leader's daughter. And he asks who this other one is. Ah, it must be that child, the son of the outer pavilion leader. And just looking at them, their understanding seems quite disappointing. And don't tell me that these children are really the most outstanding prospects one gets when developing in the Taeul Sect. Anyway, he shouldn't waste his energy on useless things and just focus on boosting young Gai Cheoyoung. And boosting him definitely doesn't mean teaching Taeul Sect martial arts, because if he diligently trained that kind of thing, they wouldn't want him to end up as a third-rate martial artist. But while he was talking a lot of crap, our boy couldn't take it anymore and says, "Oh my, it's not like he is some kind of alley thug, right?" But every word he spits out is very annoying, which leaves the old man very pissed off, asking what the hell he just said. Only our boy steps forward and apologizes, and he meant to say that in his head, but it ended up slipping out, and the old man asks if by chance that is an apology. Only our boy says that, well, honestly, maybe it is true, because just a moment ago, he called the father of his junior sister and leader of the Taeul Sect, sect leader Hong, as if he were a friend, and he asked about the other party's achievement, which is something martial artists shouldn't ask recklessly. And finally, he didn't pretend to know, and belittled and ignored his sect's martial arts, and he asks if anyone wouldn't be angry hearing such things. Still, according to the words of the wise, one should not treat even the arrogant and rude person with discourtesy, and that clearly is his fault. So he offers his sincere apologies, and looking around with their question, who the hell is this kid? He is really audacious, calling the people of the Iron Sword Sect alley thugs, but sitting up there observing everything, the sect leader looks very serious, while the young leader gets very pissed, almost wanting to charge at our protagonist, while Jin So-un very confidently looks him in the eye to eye, asking if he isn't going to accept his apology, and the guy, completely out of control, calls him a rude brat, almost attacking him with that cup. Only at that instant, someone opens the door all at once, telling the sect leader that the Murim Alliance's chief strategist has just arrived. So everyone gets excited, and the sect leader stands up immediately and asks what the hell they are doing. They must hurry and greet the chief strategist. So, just like that, everyone in the room starts running outside, while our boy and his friend Hong observe everything. And after they leave, they are left alone with the sect leader's granddaughter, and Hong asks if they shouldn't go too. Only Jin So-un says there will be hundreds of people rushing to form ties with the chief strategist anyway, and it's 100 times better to just go in and get a good seat first. But at that moment, the pavilion leader grabs him and asks what the hell he was thinking using such language with the young sect leader, and he already told them several times to behave properly. Only our boy tells him to be honest. When he was talking to him earlier, he saw everything from behind, and if he hadn't intervened, he would have drawn his sword. And our boy thinks that the damn young sect leader must have realized that, and he probably kept talking, hoping someone would attack him. And in this manner, he starts talking very seriously that he shouldn't act recklessly, and if he really can't see that the Iron Sword Sect is blatantly trying to irritate them, and what he is saying is to not screw up and act like a gentleman as much as possible. And the old man, embarrassed, says he knows that. Only our protagonist, curious, asks what happened 20 years ago, and he had a bitter expression on his face during the whole reception. And hearing this, The old man turns to his father, but his father just shakes his head, and simply he stays silent. Only at that instant, interrupting the conversations, Song Moran asks, how about they talk inside, and she will take them to a good place, and the old man appears, and says that is great, and if she is offering to guide them, they should hurry and follow her. So later on in a large room, our boy thinks that this is a very nice VIP seat, with a clear view of a large and beautiful lake, and these are delicacies that normally they wouldn't even dream of seeing, so he is really wondering why the people of the Iron Sword Sect are treating them so well like this. And now at the table, Song Moran stares at our boy and asks what his name is, and he says it's Jin So-un. But anyway, he asks if she shouldn't go see the Murim Alliance's chief strategist now, but she says the sect rules state that women are not included in important matters anyway, so she won't be punished just for not being there. And so another memory comes to our boy about the young leader of the Iron Sword Sect, who has 2 children, the Blood Wolf Mo-hyun and the beautiful wolf Song Moran, and he knows that the Blood Wolf grew up monopolizing all the resources of the Iron Sword Sect, and is considered the one who eventually will inherit the sect. On the other hand, young Song Moran is still a gifted genius, who despite starting her internal energy training at the late age of 9, will later enter the Murim Academy alongside the Blood Wolf. And so he tells her that the beautiful wolf's teeth are sharper than the Blood Wolf's, and receiving such undeserved treatment from someone like you might actually be a good thing from the Taeul Sect perspective. And she says quite animatedly that he really thinks highly of her, and she asks if by chance he is interested in her. Only our boy says he was just sharing the rumors he heard frequently, and the girl laughs and says that anyway she apologizes on her father's behalf for what happened earlier and how they interacted with the merchant group in the past. He must have acted that way because he deeply regrets losing brother Kejo-young. Only our boy says it's not too late, not even now, so she can just take him. But she just keeps laughing, saying he really jokes too much. Jin So-un simply goes ahead and speaks. Anyway, there is one thing that makes him curious. He asks what the Iron Sword Sect's intention is in inviting the Taeul Sect here, and she says calmly that it is a banquet, and it is more meaningful when many people gather to celebrate. Only our boy points out that many assassinations in history occurred during banquets, which makes her very serious as she stands up immediately saying that he is an interesting person, young warrior Jin So-un, and she would like to share a meal with him to ease his suspicion. But now it is time to go, so she asks for permission and leave, and right after she leaves, Sister Hong stares at our protagonist and asks, what do you mean he called her Miss? Which leaves our protagonist, Jin So-un, completely lost. But now, later at night, several young guys start talking that Miss Song is as exceptionally beautiful as the rumors say, and basically everyone starts flirting with her, fishing for a chance. But little did they know that the Miss had already fled from there, while the maid starts shouting her name, asking where she is, and she up on the roof comments to herself that finally she can breathe now, and to think that among all these people, there isn't even one decent man, much less a true warrior. Still, young Master Jin So-un from the Taeul Sect was a bit interested. His internal power seems insignificant, but facing Blue Bamboo Fortress's Guryangsa and even facing her own father, the young leader of the Iron Sword Sect, he never lowered his head and was truly confident. But she wonders if he really isn't afraid of the Iron Sword Sect, or maybe he is just a madman. Only at that moment she notices that at the youth banquet, the ones entering are Gi and Hong, and not Jin So-un. And come to think of it, those men mentioned something about the banquet earlier, and she thinks her brother told him that he would only gather young disciples to drink tonight. But why are only those 2 going? And she wonders if that guy really isn't going, and getting excited about it, she says this should be fun. So later on, someone knocks on the protagonist's room door, and he asks curious who it is, and as soon as he opens it, he is very surprised because the one at the door was Miss Song Moran, and he quite confused asks what she is doing here. So late at night, and she replies that her sect prepared a banquet for rising young stars to make friends, and she thought it would be good if young Master Jin So-un joined them. But our boy thanks her, yet he will have to rudely decline, and it has been a long day with many events. So both he and the sect disciples are physically and mentally exhausted. But she asks what does he mean by all of them, and is that really true? Because she saw Miss Hong walking over there, which highly surprises our boy, who basically follows her, while thinking that before his regression, he couldn't hold back against her brother's provocations exactly at this banquet they're heading to right now, and it ended in a duel, and as a result his father and the Taeul Sect suffered humiliation to ensure that duel never happened, and that is why he tried to avoid attending this time, and he comments to himself that he guesses he has no choice but to attend, and he can't leave junior sister Hong alone in a place where the Iron Sword Sect might have set a trap. And hearing this from afar, she is quite surprised by this attitude of his, and as our boy walks past her, she gets very serious and asks if by chance he is saying that her sect would invite guests only to set a trap for them. And our protagonist turns around confused and asks if she really knows nothing or if her acting skill is of an even higher level than her martial arts. But she says very irritated that just like in the afternoon, he seems to be showing a huge inferiority complex toward the Iron Sword Sect, while our boy wonders if she really knows nothing about what her own people are plotting against them. But she keeps saying that it is true they consider the Taeul Sect a thorn in their side. But even so, the Iron Sword Sect doesn't act like a bunch of street thugs, but simply, our boy laughs and says that he will make a prediction for her. At this banquet, her brother Sung-mo-hen will create an opportunity to trample the Taeul Sect, even if he backs down, and eventually he will turn the Taeul Sect into a laughingstock. And she says quite irritated that she misjudged him, and she thought he was an honorable man who wouldn't tolerate injustice, but he is just a lunatic suffering from persecution delusion. But our protagonist tells her that he also genuinely hopes it's just his delusion, and simply he enters the said banquet. But now inside the banquet, that guy from the God knows where fortress stands up and starts talking to everyone, asking if they really think this makes sense, and that the Taeul Sect is still part of the 108 Peaks, when an exceptional orthodox sect like the Iron Sword Sect of Hefei is not, and even the excellent merchant group is inevitably tied to the Taeul Sect because of that damn special admission to the 108 Peaks. And it is truly a tragic situation, and the people around observing everything start laughing hard at Hong because she apparently has no words to counter. But another guy comments that it isn't that she doesn't want to counter, she simply can't because nothing he said is wrong. But in Hong's mind, even though she is suffering humiliation, she is still very happy. And instead of brother Jin So-un being there, she is the one suffering this. But obviously, the guy isn't going to let it slide, and he turns to sister Hong and says that now he wants to hear the Taeul position, and he says that stagnant rotten water must be eliminated for the greater good, and he asks if by any chance the Taeul Sect agrees. And simply she, very nervous and not knowing how to reply, starts to stutter. But to everyone's surprise, our boy appears right then, saying yes, they agree with that opinion. Quietly in the corner, Sung-mo-ran observes everything, and as soon as she enters, the guy from the fortress already starts hitting on her a lot, saying that if she is going to join them, he asks that she please sit by his side, but she just apologizes and says she is only there to guide the guests, so she will leave shortly. And off to the side that Gay asks how the hell he was with Miss Song. But our protagonist doesn't even pay attention to him and asks if they could set up another table for drinks here. But Gay, very pissed, starts calling him a bastard and asks if he couldn't hear what he just said. But our protagonist, very serious, calls him senior brother and says that someone who just sits idly by, with folded arms drinking wine, while his sect is completely insulted and his junior sister is humiliated right in front of him. He wants to know if that is truly what it means to be a senior brother. But off to the side, Hong steps into their fight, tells them to stop right now, and asks Jin So-un why he came here. But our boy starts thinking about other things, because he knows that anyway, while everyone is busy mocking the Taeul Sect, those two haven't even cast a glance at them. The first is the heaven-opening divine dragon Namgong-san, the eldest son of the Namgong family, and part of the Dragon and Phoenix Assembly. He was called one of the hidden dragons of Anhui province, and right in the center is the blood wolf of the Iron Sword Sect, Sung-mo-hen, the host of this banquet. But taking the cue, the guy from the fortress walks up to Jin So-un and comments that it's really a shame, but his private conversation with Lady Sung will have to wait for next time, because look who they found there, if it isn't Jin So-un from the Taeul Sect. And he says that then he is right to assume that he interrupted his conversation with his junior sister, and says that he stated he literally agrees, and a lake can only stay clean when new water is flowing in. However, that is under the premise that the new water is clean, because for example, they have the Blue Bamboo Fortress, a rising power in Anhui province, which should have entered the 108 Peaks a long time ago. But why couldn't they? And the kid says this is because the existing 108 Peaks have been kissing up to the Murim Alliance too much. But our boy says that's not why, and it's because of the Blue Bamboo blood incident, which happened 60 years ago, which leaves the kid completely perplexed. But our brave protagonist keeps touching the sore spot, saying that the brothers inside the fortress drew swords on each other for the position of fortress master. And don't get him wrong, they are an excellent and strong sect. However, if he had to fight against the underworld and was told to trust his back to a group where brothers draw swords against each other, he would rather not. And even the Murim Alliance naturally would feel uncomfortable accepting such a sect as a blood ally. But at that moment, the kid grabs him by the collar and asks how he dares to dishonor his fortress. But at this moment, finally, the main character of the night stands up and asks what the hell he thinks he is doing right now. The nervous kid lets go of Jin So-un, but the boy says that showing such disrespect to a guest who came there by the invitation of their sect is the same as disregarding them. But off to the side, realizing the mistake, his sister asks what the hell he is talking about, and Blue Bamboo Fortress was responsible for starting the fight. But her brother tells her to shut up and not interfere in anything, because he clearly saw this fellow derail and ruin the constructive discussion. Beside Jin So-un, Hong realizes this is bad because her senior brother has lost his temper. There will be no going back. But simply our boy stands up before her and apologizes because it seems he ruined this pleasant banquet, and he has no excuses for young Song Mo-hyun, which greatly surprises his sister Song Mo-ran. But he keeps saying that he also apologizes to young Master Gu for recklessly bringing up his sex matters, and he was hasty, so they will leave now. So he asks that he please calm his anger and enjoy the rest of the banquet. But obviously the kid keeps staring at him while he walks away and calls home. But before he could leave, the guy asks him to wait and says that he insulted a guest of the Iron Sword Sect in his own home, and if he lets him leave unscathed, how would that make him look? And as a disciple of the Iron Sword Sect and grandson of the sect leader, he cannot simply let this pass with a mere apology. Therefore, Song Mo-hyun challenges him to a duel, obviously all set up, and seeing this, the girl realizes exactly what Jin So-un had told her before, while our boy starts laughing right then, going completely Joker mode, realizing there is no use trying to avoid the matter, and there is no use fighting to stop what is destined to happen, and simply he turns to Song Mo-ran and asks if she saw that he was completely right, which leaves her very embarrassed right then, and our boy thinks that it would eventually happen anyway, and back in his room, the pavilion leader asks if he really accepted the duel, and how the hell he plans to handle the consequences, and that you shouldn't have even gone to that banquet in the first place. But our protagonist says that if he hadn't gone, he would have challenged Hong Saryeon, and if he is going to scold someone, it shouldn't be him, but senior brother Gai Cho-young for dragging her to that place. But the old man gets even angrier. Only Hong Saryeon interrupts the conversation and says he is right, but even so, he should have restrained himself, and she asks if he thinks young Song Mo-hyun looks like an easy target just because he defeated senior brother Gai Cho-young, and if he really thinks his techniques will work against the Iron Sword Sect, and if by chance he gets hit by that massive sword during the duel, he could truly die. And simply she starts almost crying very cutely, while our boy only asks her not to cry and not to worry either, because he accepted the duel, because he has a plan, and who said he was going to die, and she only needs to think about how she will congratulate him when he returns victorious. But the pavilion leader keeps yelling at him, asking how he can make such unfunny jokes right now. But in the corner, his own father remains silent, while our boy faces the old man very confident and says that he can handle this alone and he doesn't need to do anything. So he asks that please just trust him and watch this time, and the old man says that it's fine, alright. And that is our boy, who faces his father and asks him not to worry too much because everything will be fine. So thus the next day our boy, still in his room, is surprised by Hong Saryeon entering all at once, and he asks why she is in such a hurry, and she says that the outer pavilion leader went to see the sect leader, and hearing this, our boy is shocked and starts running in that direction, while thinking that he said not to worry, because he was afraid something like this would happen. But unfortunately today, on the day of the duel, at the Iron Sword Sect's central training field, the same thing he feared occurred, and in the middle of everyone, in the center of the arena, is our protagonist's father, kneeling in front of the sect leader, and this sect leader apologizes to the chief strategist for causing him worry. But the old man says that anyway, he shouldn't concern himself with him, and should take care of his own business. But even so, he thinks that scolding him publicly in front of the Murim Alliance chief strategist. Apparently, the Iron Sword Sect seems determined to expel the Taeul Sect from the 108 Peaks at any cost, and simply the protagonist's father bows again and bangs his forehead on the ground, saying that his careless son committed a sin worthy of death, and he begs for his forgiveness. And this sect leader again apologizes to the chief strategist for causing worry. But the old man repeats that he shouldn't concern himself with him and should just take care of his own business. But his father tells him to stay put, and asks what father in this world would be able to just watch his son be wounded unilaterally. But our boy retorts that there is no son in this world who would just stand there watching his father appear so pathetic. But his father once again tells him to back down, while our boy starts clenching his fist. Only at that moment, young Master Song Mo-hyun, disbelieving, says that seeing his father banging his head on the ground, begging for him to spare his life, almost brings tears to his eyes, and he says that he will let this pass just this once in consideration of his father's sincerity. So he must kneel by his side right now and beg for forgiveness. But right then, our boy draws his sword and points it at him, speaking to his father that he has already drawn his sword, and from now on, his apologies have no meaning. So he commands him to back down, while saying that he just wants to show them that he is not just a man of words. And his father says he is a foolish child. Only our boy says he will not disappoint him, and he should just watch. So this young Song Mo-hyun draws his sword and heads toward our protagonist, saying he is anxious to see the Grandmaster skill of the 108 Peaks, and he wants to see what he can do. And this boy of ours starts to think that this guy was raised as the sect's successor, and that he is absorbing all of its resources. However, the Iron Sword Sect's sword has a compatibility against the Taeul Sect sword, which seeks lightness and speed. So first he will overwhelm him in speed, and our guy manages to block the strike, and says he is like a little mouse already blocking the strike, and then counterattacking and causing a big explosion. And observing this, the strategist thinks that he knows the Iron Sword Sect is strong, but for him to be pushed back right in the first clash is exactly as the rumors say. The Taeul Sect really lacks talent, and So-un asks if this is all he has. And as expected of the Taeul Sect, he is nothing special. But quickly, our boy gets up, telling him to shut his mouth, because this is just the beginning. But obviously, the more he attacks, the more young Sumohin gets excited, because he knows that he is just humiliating himself even more. But in Jin So-un's head, he thinks that it's bullshit, and this guy is absurdly strong. And the kid says that in the past, there was a man exactly like him, a man from a certain sect, who didn't know his place, and insulted the Iron Sword Sect exactly like him, and had a duel against his father, which leaves our boy very surprised, while Song says he naturally lost, and paid the price for disrespecting his sect. And he asks if he knows what price he paid, and with the flat side of a glowing blade, his back, his chest, and his abdomen were marked as punishment. And he tells our protagonist that the name of that man was Jin Tae-san, from the Taeul Sect, which leaves our boy completely perplexed, who already faces his father right then, seeing his reaction, but taking advantage of this, kicks him in the stomach, asking how he dares to look away during a duel. But even so, once again, our boy gets up thinking that it makes no sense, while the kid says again, like father, like son, referring to his lack of brain, while our protagonist thinks that even if he swallows the humiliation right in front of him, overcomes the disgrace, and pretends he doesn't know anything, and covers it up with a smile, that shameful history will just repeat itself. So finally he calms down, and asks if that is what everyone thinks. So he advances once more with the minor heaven sword art, the first basic form, while Song says that again he is using that outdated technique, and is expected of a disciple of an insignificant sect. But to Song's surprise, our boy dodged the strike, and Jin So-un thinks that if it's like this, what he has to do now is show them they are wrong. And in the middle of the fight, he starts dodging the strikes, which surprises Song a lot, who asks what is happening suddenly, and how he can do that. But little did he know that our protagonist knows all his techniques and movements. And very pissed, Song asks what kind of trick he used now, while in the protagonist's head, he knows he has to be stronger, and even stronger than everyone. But he advances once more with the minor heaven sword art, the first basic form. But this time it was all different, because he landed the strike squarely with much more force, to the point that he can change the future. And simply young Master Song falls to his knees, wounded for the first time, while our boy turns to him, very happy, asking if that is all the Iron Sword Sect has to offer.